The smoke rose black against the amber sky of October 1878, and Natalie Norton stood frozen in the dirt road, watching everything she had ever known turn to ash. The outlaws had come at dawn, 6 men with faces covered by red bandanas, and they had taken what little money her father kept hidden beneath the floorboards before setting fire to the modest ranch house that had been in her family for 12 years. Her father lay motionless near the well, and her mother had collapsed beside him, both struck down when they tried to fight back. At 22 years old, Natalie found herself utterly alone in Valverde, Texas, with nothing but the calico dress on her back and the grief that threatened to crush her lungs. She did not cry. The tears felt trapped somewhere deep inside, locked behind a wall of shock that kept her standing when her legs wanted to buckle. The October heat pressed down despite the early hour, and she could feel sweat mixing with the ash that drifted through the air like poisonous snow. Neighbors would come eventually. Someone would have seen the smoke. But for now, in this terrible moment, there was only Natalie and the crackling roar of flames devouring her childhood home. The sound of hoofbeats made her turn, and for one heart-stopping moment, she thought the outlaws had returned. But the rider who appeared through the smoke-hazed morning was alone, sitting tall on a buckskin horse, his broad-brimmed hat shadowing his face. He pulled up short when he saw the scene, his posture going rigid with alarm. Then he was dismounting in one fluid motion, his boots hitting the ground hard as he ran toward her parents. "Are they breathing?" The man's voice was rough with urgency as he dropped to one knee beside her father. Natalie forced her legs to move, stumbling forward. "I do not know. The outlaws came, and then the fire, and I did not know what to do first." He pressed his fingers to her father's neck, his sun-bronzed face tense with concentration. His jaw was strong and clean-shaven, and she noticed in some distant part of her mind that he looked to be perhaps 26 or 27, with dark hair curling slightly at his collar. "Your mother," he said sharply. "Check her pulse like I'm doing." She dropped down beside her mother, her hands shaking as she touched the familiar weathered skin of her mother's neck. For a terrible moment she felt nothing, and then there it was, faint but present. "She is alive! Your father, too. Help me move them away from the house. That fire is spreading fast." Together they half carried, half dragged her parents to a safe distance. The stranger worked with practiced efficiency, his movements quick but careful. He tore strips from his own shirt to press against the wound on her father's head, then did the same for her mother. Natalie watched his hands, noting the calluses and the careful way he handled her parents despite his obvious strength. "I am Theodore Matthews," he said, without looking up from his work. "I have a ranch about 5 miles west of here. Was riding into town when I saw your smoke. Natalie Norton." Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, too calm for what was happening. "There were 6 of them. They wore red bandanas and they wanted money." Theodore's jaw tightened. "The Garrett gang. They have been terrorizing homesteads from here to Fort Stockton." He finally looked up at her, and she saw his eyes were a startling gray-green, like sage after rain. "Your parents need a doctor. Can you ride?" "Yes." "Good. I will take your father on my horse. Do you have horses in the barn?" "The barn?" She turned, realizing she had not even thought about the animals. The barn was separate from the house, far enough that it had not yet caught fire, but close enough that it could if the wind shifted. "Our horses, our cattle. I will get them out after we secure your parents. First things first." His voice was firm but not unkind, the voice of someone accustomed to making decisions in crisis. "Stay with them. Talk to them. Let them know you are here." He moved to his horse and returned with a length of rope and a canteen. He helped her give her parents water, just small sips, then fashioned a sort of sling to help secure her father on his horse. Throughout it all, he spoke in that same steady tone, explaining what he was doing, asking her simple questions that kept her focused. By the time they had her father secured, and her mother propped between them on one of the Norton horses that Theodore had swiftly retrieved from the panicked barn, Natalie felt like she could breathe again, just a little. The ride to town was a blur. Theodore led the way, keeping his horse at a careful walk to avoid jostling her father, while Natalie followed with her mother. The older woman had regained consciousness but seemed dazed, her eyes unfocused. Natalie kept one arm wrapped around her mother's waist, murmuring reassurances that she did not entirely believe herself. Val Verde was a small town, little more than a main street with a handful of cross streets, but it had a doctor. Theodore guided them straight to Doc Pritchard's house, a neat white structure on the edge of town. The doctor emerged before they even dismounted, his weathered face creasing with concern. "What happened?" "The Garrett gang hit the Norton place," Theodore said, already easing Natalie's father down from the horse. "Both parents have head wounds. They are conscious but confused." Doc Pritchard shouted for his wife, and between the four of them, they got both injured parties inside. The doctor's office smelled of carbolic acid and dried herbs, and Natalie found herself standing uselessly in the corner while the doctor examined her parents. Theodore spoke quietly with Doc Pritchard's wife, a sturdy woman named Margaret who had known Natalie since childhood. "The girl will need a place to stay," Margaret said, her voice pitched low, but not low enough. "I heard the house was burning." "It is gone by now," Theodore replied. "Everything." Natalie closed her eyes. Everything. Her mother's china that had come all the way from St. Louis, the quilt her grandmother had made, the books she had cherished, including the volume of Shakespeare her father had given her on her 16th birthday, the clothes, the furniture, the photographs, all of it reduced to smoke and memory. "Miss Norton," Doc Pritchard's voice pulled her back. "Your parents are going to recover. They have concussions and your father has a broken rib as well, but they will heal. They need rest and monitoring. I'm going to keep them here for at least a week, possibly longer." Relief hit her so hard she swayed. Theodore was beside her in an instant, his hand steadying her elbow. "You should sit down," he said quietly. "I am fine." "You are not fine. You are in shock. Sit." He guided her to a chair with gentle insistence, and she was too tired to resist. Margaret brought her water and made her drink all of it, then brought her a thick slice of bread with butter. Natalie had not realized she was hungry until the food was in front of her, and then she ate mechanically, each bite tasting like sawdust. Theodore and the doctor spoke in low tones near the door. She caught fragments about the sheriff, about the gang, about patterns of attacks. Then Theodore returned to her side, crouching down so they were at eye level. "Sheriff Donahue is out tracking a different group of outlaws," he said. "Will not be back until tomorrow at the earliest. I am going to ride back to your property and see what can be salvaged. Is there anything specific you want me to look for?" She tried to think, but her mind felt sluggish. "My mother's jewelry box. It was in their bedroom, in the top drawer of the dresser. It has her wedding ring and some pieces from her mother. I will look for it." He hesitated, and she could see him weighing his words. "Miss Norton, when night comes, you will need somewhere to stay. Margaret and Doc Pritchard already have a full house with your parents and the doc's sister visiting. The hotel is full because of the cattle auction this week. I have room at my ranch, a spare bedroom. My housekeeper can chaperone, and you would be safe and comfortable." The offer was generous, possibly too generous from a stranger, but Natalie found herself nodding. What choice did she have? "Thank you, Mr. Matthews. I appreciate your kindness. Call me Theodore, or Theo, if you prefer. And it is not kindness, it is just the right thing to do." He stood, settling his hat back on his head. "I will be back before sundown. Rest if you can." After he left, Margaret fussed over Natalie, trying to get her to lie down in the spare room. But Natalie could not rest. She sat beside her parents' beds, holding her mother's hand, watching the steady rise and fall of her father's chest. They looked so fragile, both of them, though they had always seemed unbreakable to her. Her father had worked this land since before she was born, carving a life out of the harsh Texas soil. Her mother had kept their home, raised Natalie, survived droughts and floods, and the constant threat of Comanche raids in the early days. "We will rebuild," Natalie whispered, though neither of her parents was awake to hear. "I promise you, we will rebuild." But even as she said it, she wondered how. The ranch had not been profitable in years. The money the outlaws had stolen was probably everything her parents had. And now, with medical bills and no house, no barn, possibly no livestock, if they had scattered or perished in the fire, the weight of it pressed down on her until she could barely breathe. True to his word, Theodore returned just as the sun was painting the sky, orange and gold. He carried a saddlebag that he set down gently beside her chair. "The fire burned hot and fast," he said quietly. "Most of the structure is gone, but I found this in the yard, Looks like someone threw it out a window before the worst of it." Natalie opened the bag with trembling hands. Inside was her mother's jewelry box, singed but intact. Beneath it, wrapped in what looked like Theodore's spare shirt, were 3 leather-bound books: her Shakespeare, her mother's Bible, and the ledger her father kept for the ranch. "The ledger was in the barn," Theodore continued. "The barn is still standing, though it needs repairs. Your horses are fine. I counted 4. Your cattle scattered, but I saw at least a dozen grazing not too far off. They can be rounded up. You saved these for me." She looked up at him, really seeing him for the first time. There was ash on his face and his hands, and his shirt was torn from tearing off strips for bandages earlier. He had spent his entire day helping her family, people he did not even know. "Like I said, it is just the right thing to do." He shifted his weight, suddenly looking uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Are you ready to head to the ranch? It is a decent ride, and full dark is coming soon." She said goodbye to her parents, though they were both sleeping. Doc Pritchard promised to send word immediately if anything changed. Then she followed Theodore out into the cooling evening, where 2 horses waited. He had brought a gentle mare for her, already saddled. The ride to Theodore's ranch was quiet. Natalie was grateful for his silence, for the way he did not press her to talk or try to fill the air with meaningless platitudes. The landscape rolled past in shades of purple and gray as the sun set, mesquite trees casting long shadows, the occasional call of a coyote echoing across the desert. Theodore's ranch appeared as a collection of dark shapes against the darkening sky. As they drew closer, Natalie could make out a solid 2-story house, a large barn, several outbuildings, and corrals. It was well maintained and clearly prosperous, a sharp contrast to her family's struggling homestead. A woman emerged from the house as they rode up, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 50, with steel-gray hair pulled back in a practical bun and sharp eyes that took in everything at once. "Theo, we were getting worried," she said. Then her gaze landed on Natalie. "And you must be the young lady from the Norton place. I heard about the attack. Terrible business. Come inside, child. You look half dead on your feet. Miss Norton, this is Rosa Martinez. She has been keeping house for me since I started this ranch 4 years ago, and I would have starved or lived in complete chaos without her." Rosa made a dismissive sound. "He exaggerates, but only a little. Come, Miss Norton. I have stew keeping warm, and there is a room all ready for you." The inside of Theodore's house was comfortable and clean, decorated simply but with care. The furniture was solid and well made, and there were curtains on the windows, books on shelves, a warm rug in front of the stone fireplace. It felt like a real home, not just a place where a bachelor lived. Rosa sat Natalie down at the kitchen table and placed a bowl of stew in front of her. The smell alone made Natalie's stomach clench with hunger, and she ate gratefully while Rosa bustled about and Theodore washed up at the sink. They did not press her to talk, and she was grateful for that too. After eating, Rosa showed her to a small bedroom upstairs. It had a real bed with a thick mattress, clean sheets, a washstand with a pitcher and basin, and a window that looked out over the ranch. Someone had already placed a clean nightgown on the bed and a towel beside the wash basin. "I will be in the room just next door," Rosa said kindly. "If you need anything at all during the night, you just call out. Do you need help with anything?" "No, thank you. You have been so kind." Rosa patted her hand. "Tomorrow will be a hard day, and the day after that too. But you will get through this. You are stronger than you know." After Rosa left, Natalie stood in the middle of the small room and finally let herself cry. The tears came in great heaving sobs that shook her entire body, and she pressed her face into the pillow to muffle the sound. She cried for her parents, for the home she had lost, for the fear and uncertainty of what came next. She cried until there were no tears left, and then she lay in the darkness, exhausted but unable to sleep. Somewhere in the house, she heard the low murmur of voices. Theodore and Rosa, probably discussing her situation. She wondered what they were saying, whether Theodore regretted his offer of shelter. She would not stay long, she promised herself, just until her parents were well enough to make plans, just until she figured out what to do next. Sleep finally claimed her near dawn, and when she woke, the sun was already high. She dressed quickly in the same calico dress from yesterday, very aware that it was the only thing she owned now besides her mother's jewelry box and the few items Theodore had salvaged. Downstairs, she found Rosa in the kitchen, kneading bread dough with strong, practiced movements. There is breakfast keeping warm in the oven, Rosa said. Theo is out with the men, working the cattle. He said to tell you to rest today, that he will take you into town this afternoon to see your parents. I should not just rest. I should help. I need to earn my keep. Rosa gave her a long look. Child, you survived an attack yesterday. Your parents were nearly killed. Your home burned down. I think you are entitled to a day of rest. But Natalie could not rest. Sitting still meant thinking, and thinking meant confronting the overwhelming reality of her situation. So, she insisted on helping Rosa with the housework, and the older woman eventually relented. They worked together through the morning, washing clothes, preparing food, sweeping floors. The physical labor felt good, purposeful. Theodore returned at midday, dusty and tired. He washed up at the pump outside, then came in for the meal Rosa had prepared. Natalie sat across from him at the table, suddenly shy. In the chaos of yesterday, she had not really taken the time to consider him as a person, but now, in the calm light of day, she found herself noticing things. The way his hands moved with economical grace, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the thoughtful way he listened when Rosa talked about needing supplies from town. "How are you feeling?" he asked Natalie. "Better. Thank you for letting me stay here. You are welcome as long as you need." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I sent one of my ranch hands to look over your property this morning. The house is a total loss, but like I said yesterday, the barn can be repaired. Your water well is intact. The structure of the ranch is still there. It can be rebuilt." "With what money?" The words came out more bitterly than she intended. "The Outlaws took everything. There are ways. The bank sometimes gives loans. The community can help with labor. It would not be easy, but it is possible." Natalie stared at her plate. A bank loan would require collateral, and what did she have? Land that was barely productive, a burned-out homestead, and 2 injured parents who would need months to recover. No bank would take that risk. "I am sorry," Theodore said quietly. "That was thoughtless. You do not need me telling you what is possible when you are still dealing with what is real." She looked up, surprised by his perceptiveness. "It is not your fault, and you are right, in theory. But theory and reality are often very different things." That afternoon, Theodore hitched up a wagon to take them into town. Rosa came along, partly for propriety, and partly, Natalie suspected, because the older woman wanted to check on the Norton parents herself. The ride was more comfortable than the frantic journey of yesterday, and Natalie found herself relaxing slightly as Theodore pointed out features of the landscape. "That ridge there is where I found my first wild mustangs," he said, gesturing to a line of rocky hills. "Spent 3 days tracking them before I got close enough to rope one. Nearly got myself killed when she threw me into a cactus patch." "You break your own horses?" "Some of them. It is good money if you know what you are doing and do not mind the bruises." He grinned, and it transformed his face, making him look younger and less serious. "I have got the bruises and am still learning if I know what I'm doing." Despite everything, Natalie felt herself smile. At the doctor's house, they found both of Natalie's parents awake and sitting up. Her mother immediately began crying when she saw Natalie, pulling her close with surprising strength. "We thought we had lost you," her mother sobbed. "We did not know where you were. The outlaws, the fire, everything happened so fast." "I am safe, Mama. I am staying with Mr. Matthews. He rescued us. He saved your jewelry box and some of the books." Her father reached out and gripped Theodore's hand. "I owe you a debt I can never repay." "No debt, sir. I'm just glad I came along when I did." Theodore shifted uncomfortably, clearly unused to gratitude. "How are you both feeling?" They talked for a while, and Natalie was relieved to see that both her parents seemed clear-headed, though obviously still in pain. Dr. Pritchard confirmed they were healing well, but needed at least another week of rest and observation. When her father started talking about the ranch, about needing to get back and assess the damage, Theodore gently but firmly told him there would be time for that later. "Your daughter is staying with me and my housekeeper," Theodore said. "She is safe and cared for. Right now, your only job is to heal. The ranch will still be there when you are ready." After they left the doctor's house, Theodore drove the wagon to the general store. Inside, he spoke quietly to Rosa, then approached Natalie. "You need clothes and personal items," he said matter-of-factly. "Rosa is going to help you pick out what you need. Do not worry about the cost. Consider it a loan if that makes you more comfortable. But you cannot wear the same dress every day." Natalie wanted to protest, but Rosa was already steering her toward the women's section, and Theodore was moving away to speak with the store owner. An hour later, Natalie had 2 new dresses, a nightgown, undergarments, a pair of sturdy boots, a hairbrush, and various other necessities. Theodore paid for everything without comment, ignoring her stammered promises to repay him. On the ride back to the ranch, Rosa dozed in the back of the wagon, and Natalie found herself alone with Theodore on the bench seat. The afternoon sun cast everything in golden light, and for a moment, she could almost forget the tragedy of the past 2 days. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. "You do not know me. You do not owe my family anything." Theodore was silent for a long moment, his eyes on the road ahead. "About 5 years ago, I was in a bad way. I had just left my family's ranch in Kansas after a falling out with my father. I was young and stubborn and thought I knew everything. I made it as far as New Mexico before I ran out of money and prospects. I was sleeping rough, taking any work I could find, which was not much." He paused, guiding the horses around a rocky section of the trail. "A rancher named Samuel Wade found me trying to steal eggs from his chicken coop. Instead of shooting me or turning me in, he gave me a job. For 2 years I worked for him, and he taught me everything I know about running a ranch, about breeding horses, about surviving in this country. When he died, he left me enough money to start my own place. Said he never had children, and he liked the idea of his legacy continuing through someone who cared about the land as much as he did. So you are paying it forward," Natalie said softly. "Something like that. Samuel saved my life. The least I can do is help someone else when they need it." He glanced at her, his gray-green eyes serious. "And for what it is worth, I do not think of it as charity. Your family has been working this land for over a decade. That means something. That deserves respect and support." Natalie felt warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she could not quite name. "Thank you, Theodore, truly." "Theo," he corrected gently. "My friends call me Theo." "Then thank you, Theo." The days began to fall into a pattern. Mornings, Natalie helped Rosa with the housework, though the older woman insisted she did not need to. Afternoons, Theo would take her into town to visit her parents, whose recovery continued steadily. Evenings, the 3 of them would eat dinner together, and Theo would tell stories about the ranch, about the wild country, about the characters he had met in his travels. Natalie found herself looking forward to these dinners more and more, charmed by Theo's dry humor and the easy warmth that existed between him and Rosa. A week after the attack, Sheriff Donahue returned to Val Verde. Natalie and Theo met with him in his office, and Natalie recounted everything she could remember about the Outlaws. The sheriff, a weathered man in his 50s with an impressive mustache, listened carefully and took notes. "It is the Garrett gang, no question," he said grimly. "They have hit 6 homesteads in the past 2 months. Always the same pattern. Take the money, burn the buildings. They seem to enjoy the destruction as much as the theft." "Have you got any leads on where they are?" Theo asked. "Some. Word is they are holed up somewhere in the Davis Mountains. I am putting together a posse to go after them, but it is slow work. Most men cannot afford to leave their ranches for the time it would take to track them down properly." He looked at Theo with a calculating expression. "You would be a good man to have along. You know the country, you can shoot, and you can handle yourself. When do you ride out?" 2 days, we leave at dawn." Natalie felt a sudden jolt of fear. The thought of Theo riding off after dangerous outlaws made her stomach clench. But it was not her place to object. She barely knew him. He had already done so much for her family. "I will be there," Theo said. That evening, Natalie was quieter than usual. Rosa noticed and asked if she was feeling all right, and she made vague excuses about being tired. But the truth was, she could not stop thinking about Theo riding off into danger. After dinner, she found him outside, checking on the horses in the corral. "You are going with the posse," she said without preamble. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "I am. Those men need to be stopped. It is dangerous. It is necessary." He leaned against the corral fence, his posture relaxed, but his eyes serious. "They hurt your family, Natalie. They have hurt others too. If we do not go after them, they will just keep doing it. I know, She trailed off, not sure how to put her feelings into words. "Please be careful." His expression softened. "I will be. I have got too much to come back to." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning, and Natalie felt her heart skip. The next 2 days passed too quickly. Natalie found herself watching Theo more closely, noticing small things, the way he was patient with a skittish horse, the careful way he repaired a broken fence post, taking pride in doing it right, the kindness in his voice when he spoke to Rosa. She had met kind men before, and she had met handsome men, but there was something about Theo that was different. He was solid, trustworthy, real. On the morning he was set to leave with the posse, Natalie woke before dawn. She found Rosa already in the kitchen, packing food supplies. "For the posse," Rosa explained. "They will be living on hardtack and jerky otherwise. At least I can send them off with some decent biscuits and dried beef." Natalie helped her pack, her hands moving automatically while her mind churned with worry. When Theo came downstairs, dressed for travel with his rifle slung over his shoulder and his saddlebags packed, she felt her throat tighten. "You take care of yourself, boy," Rosa said fiercely, pulling him into a quick embrace. "And you come back in one piece, you hear me?" "Yes, madam." Theo turned to Natalie, and for a moment they just looked at each other. "Will you look after things here? Rosa knows the routine, but I would feel better knowing someone else was watching out for her and the ranch." "Of course." Natalie stepped forward impulsively and gripped his hand. "Come back safe, Theo." His hand was warm and calloused around hers. "I will do my best." Then he was gone, riding off into the gray pre-dawn light, and Natalie felt like part of her went with him. The days that followed were tense. Natalie threw herself into work, helping Rosa with everything from cooking to mending to even helping the ranch hands with some of the lighter tasks. The physical labor kept her busy, but it could not stop her from worrying. Every night she prayed that Theo would return safely. Her parents were released from Doc Pritchard's care after 10 days. They were still healing, but well enough to travel. Natalie brought them to the ranch, and Theo had told Rosa to give them the main guest room before he left. Her father was quiet, subdued by the loss of their home and his own physical weakness. Her mother tried to stay positive, but Natalie could see the worry in her eyes. "We cannot stay here indefinitely," her father said one evening. They were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. "Theodore has been more than generous, but we are imposing." "Theo doesn't seem to think so," Natalie replied, "and he told me before he left that you were welcome as long as needed." "That young man is either a saint or a fool," her father said, but there was affection in his voice. "Probably a bit of both. He is sweet on you, you know." Natalie felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Papa, that is not true. He is just being kind." Her mother laughed softly. "Darling, I may have a head injury, but I am not blind. The way he looks at you, the way he makes sure you are comfortable and cared for, that is not just kindness." Natalie did not know what to say. She had been trying not to think too much about her own growing feelings for Theo, telling herself it was just gratitude and proximity. But in the quiet moments late at night, she would remember the way his hand felt in hers, the warmth in his eyes, the sound of his laugh. And she would wonder if maybe, possibly, her parents were right. 2 weeks after the posse left, a rider came in the late afternoon. Natalie was helping Rosa prepare dinner when they heard the hoofbeats. Her heart leaped, but when she rushed outside, it was not Theo. It was one of the other ranch hands, a young man named Billy. "Posse is coming back," Billy announced. "They are about an hour out. Someone rode ahead to tell folks in town." "Are they all right? Was anyone hurt?" Natalie could barely get the words out. "Do not know, miss. The rider did not say." The longest hour of Natalie's life followed. She tried to keep busy, but her eyes kept drifting to the horizon. Rosa was equally anxious, her usual calm demeanor cracking as she paced the kitchen. Finally, they saw the dust cloud, a group of riders moving slowly. As they got closer, Natalie counted them. 7 men. The posse had left with 8. Her heart sank. But then she saw him, Theo riding slightly behind the others, his hat pulled low against the setting sun. He was alive. He was whole. Relief flooded through her so intensely that her knees went weak. The posse stopped at the main house. Sheriff Donahue looked exhausted, but satisfied. "We got them," he announced to the small crowd that had gathered. "The whole Garrett gang. They will be standing trial in Fort Stockton." "What about Cole?" Rosa asked, her voice tight. The sheriff's expression grew somber. "Cole Hendricks took a bullet in the leg during the fight. He's going to be fine, but he is staying in a town 2 days west to heal up before traveling. His brother went to stay with him." So, that explained the missing men. Natalie felt guilty for her relief that it was not Theo who had been hurt. The posse dispersed, the men heading home to their own ranches and families. Theo dismounted slowly, moving like every muscle ached. Rosa immediately took charge, ordering him to sit down, bringing him food and water, fussing over him like a mother hen. Natalie hung back, suddenly shy, not sure what to say or do. Later, after Theo had eaten and washed the trail dust off, he found Natalie sitting on the porch. The stars were coming out, brilliant in the clear Texas sky. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. "It is your porch." He lowered himself onto the step beside her, with a slight groan. "I am getting too old for sleeping on the ground and riding all day." "You are barely 30. 28, actually, but I feel about 50 right now." He stretched his legs out, and they sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "I missed this place, missed Rosa's cooking, missed the comfort of my own bed." "Did you miss anything else?" The words were out before Natalie could stop them, bold and revealing. Theo turned to look at her, his gray-green eyes searching her face. "Yes," he said quietly. "I missed you." Her breath caught. "Theo, I know I do not have any right to say that. You have been here less than a month. You have been through hell, and the last thing you need is me making things complicated. But out there, tracking those outlaws through the mountains, all I could think about was getting back here, getting back to you." Natalie felt tears prick her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. "I was so worried about you. Every day you were gone, I was terrified that something would happen, that you would not come back. I came back." He reached out and took her hand, the gesture achingly familiar. "And I am not going anywhere." They sat like that for a long time, hands clasped, watching the stars. And Natalie felt something settle in her chest, something warm and right and true. Over the following weeks, things shifted between them. The attraction had always been there, simmering under the surface, but now it bloomed into something deeper. Theo found excuses to be near her, teaching her to ride the wilder horses, showing her how to rope a calf, taking her to see the far corners of his property, sharing his dreams for expanding the ranch, breeding better horses, maybe starting a cattle operation that could rival the big spreads up north. Natalie found herself sharing too, her dreams, which she had never told anyone, how she had always wanted to see more than just Val Verde and their small homestead, how she loved reading and learning and sometimes wished she could have gone to a real school, how she felt guilty for wanting more when her parents had worked so hard to give her what they could. "That is not guilt you should carry," Theo said one afternoon. They were riding along a creek bed, the horses walking side by side. "Your parents would want you to dream big, and there is no reason you cannot have those things. Books can be ordered, experiences can be sought out. You are not trapped by where you come from." "You really believe that?" "I know it. I left Kansas with nothing but anger and pride. Look at me now. I have a ranch, a purpose, a life I built with my own hands. You can do the same. Whatever you want, Natalie, you can make it happen." His faith in her was intoxicating. No one had ever talked to her this way, like she was capable of anything. One evening, about 6 weeks after the attack, Natalie's father asked to speak with Theo privately. They went into Theo's office, and Natalie tried not to pace nervously, wondering what they were discussing. When they emerged an hour later, both men looked satisfied. "Come here, daughter," her father said. Natalie approached cautiously. "Mr. Matthews has made a very generous offer. He is willing to lend us the money to rebuild our house and repair the barn. The terms are more than fair, and he has agreed to wait on repayment until we are back on our feet." Natalie looked at Theo in surprise. "That is extremely generous." Theo shrugged. "It is an investment. Your father is a good rancher, and with a little capital and some hard work, the Norton spread can be productive again. Besides," he added with a small smile, "I have a vested interest in seeing your family succeed." Her father chuckled. "I suspect you have a vested interest in something else too, but we can discuss that later. For now, your mother and I want to start planning the rebuild. We have imposed on your hospitality long enough, Mr. Matthews." "Theo, and it is no imposition. But I understand wanting your own place. I am the same way." The planning began in earnest. Her father, still not fully recovered, directed operations from a chair while hired workers began clearing the burned ruins and laying the foundation for a new house. Theo helped coordinate, lending not just money, but expertise and labor. Several of his ranch hands volunteered their time, and other neighbors pitched in as well. The community of Valverde was small but tight-knit, and everyone remembered that the Nortons had been there for others in times of trouble. Natalie worked alongside everyone, hauling lumber, mixing mortar, cooking meals for the workers. It was exhausting, back-breaking work, but there was something deeply satisfying about watching the new house take shape. It was smaller than the old one, more practical, but it was solid and well-built. Her father had incorporated some improvements, like better ventilation for the summer heat and a root cellar for storing food. Through it all, Theo was a constant presence. He would ride over from his ranch each morning and work until evening, refusing to let Natalie's father pay him for his time. In the evenings, he would often stay for dinner, and Natalie cherished these times. The way he joked with her father, the way he listened attentively when her mother talked about her plans for a garden, the way his eyes would find Natalie across the room, warm and full of something that made her heart race. One evening, about 2 months into the rebuilding, Theo asked Natalie to take a walk with him. They strolled away from the construction site, out toward the creek that marked the border of her family's property. "It is coming along well," Theo said, gesturing back at the house. "Another month and you will be able to move in. Thanks to you. Thanks to a lot of people." He stopped walking and turned to face her. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of orange and gold. "Natalie, I need to tell you something, and I need you to be honest with me about how you feel." Her pulse quickened. "All right? I think I started falling for you the first day I met you. You were standing there in front of your burning home, looking so lost and brave at the same time, and something in my chest just knew. I tried to tell myself it was too soon, that you needed time, that I should not push, but I cannot keep pretending that what I feel is just friendship or neighborly concern." He took her hands in his touch gentle but firm. "I am in love with you, Natalie Norton. And if you will have me, I would like to court you properly. I want to take you to dances in town. I want to have Sunday dinners with your parents. I want everyone to know that you are mine and I am yours, but only if that is what you want too. I will not assume. I will not pressure you. If you need more time, or if you do not feel the same way, I will respect that." Natalie felt like her heart might burst out of her chest. "You think I do not feel the same way? Theo, I have been falling for you since the moment you crouched down beside my parents and took charge at the worst day of my life. I have been falling for you every day since. The way you tell stories, the way you treat Rosa like family, the way you believed in my family when we had nothing, the way you look at me like I am something precious. You are precious." His voice was rough with emotion. "You are the most incredible woman I have ever met. You are strong and smart and kind, and I do not deserve you, but I want to try. You do deserve me, and I want this. I want you." He pulled her close, and when his lips met hers, it felt like coming home. The kiss was sweet and searching, full of promise and possibility. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Theo rested his forehead against hers. "I am going to marry you someday," he murmured, "if you will have me." "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will have you." They courted properly, as Theo had promised. He came calling every Sunday in his best shirt, bringing flowers for her mother and engaging her father in long conversations about ranching and politics and the state of Texas. He took Natalie to the monthly dance at the town hall, and she felt like she was floating when he held her in his arms, guiding her through the steps. They went on picnics, took long rides, spent hours just talking about everything and nothing. The new Norton house was completed in late December, just in time for Christmas. Her family moved in with a mixture of joy and sadness. Joy for the new beginning, sadness for all that had been lost. But the new house felt warm and welcoming, and Natalie made sure to fill it with touches that honored their old home. She hung her mother's jewelry box in a place of honor. She displayed the salvage books on a shelf in the parlor. She made sure her father's ledger had a special place in his new office. On Christmas Eve, Theo arrived at the Norton home with gifts for everyone. For Natalie's mother, a set of fine china to replace what had been lost. For her father, a beautiful leather-bound ledger and a new pen. For Natalie, a first-edition copy of Jane Eyre that he had special ordered from St. Louis. "I remembered you saying you wanted to read it," he said softly as she opened the package with shaking hands. "Theo, this must have cost a fortune. You are worth a fortune." He looked at her parents, then back at Natalie. Actually, there is something else. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Natalie's mother gasped. Her father grinned. Theo dropped to one knee, and Natalie felt tears spring to her eyes. Natalie Norton, I know we have not been courting long, but I have never been more sure of anything in my life. You are my partner, my equal, my love. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife? He opened the box to reveal a delicate gold ring with a small diamond that caught the lamplight. Yes! Natalie did not even hesitate. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and swept her into his arms, kissing her soundly while her parents laughed and applauded. It was the best Christmas of Natalie's life. They were married in March of 1879 in a simple ceremony at the small church in Valverde. Rosa cried through the entire service. Natalie's parents beamed with pride. Half the town attended, cramming into the wooden pews to witness the union of the Norton girl and the Matthews rancher who had saved her family. Natalie wore a dress of cream-colored silk that Rosa had helped her sew, and she carried a bouquet of wildflowers that Theo had picked himself that morning. Theo wore a new suit that looked uncomfortable on his broad-shouldered frame, but he could not take his eyes off his bride. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Theo kissed her with such tenderness that Natalie felt like her heart might break from the sheer joy of it. The reception was held at Theo's ranch, which was now their ranch. Someone had strung lanterns in the yard, and there was music and dancing and more food than seemed possible. Natalie danced with her father, who was now fully recovered and back to his old self. She danced with Rosa, with the sheriff, with half the men in town. But her favorite dances were with Theo, who held her like she was made of spun glass and looked at her like she hung the moon. Later, when the guests had finally left and they were alone in their bedroom, Theo carefully removed the pins from Natalie's hair, letting it fall in waves down her back. "I cannot believe you are my wife," he murmured, running his fingers through her hair. "I cannot believe you are my husband." She turned to face him, reaching up to loosen his tie. "I love you, Theodore Matthews." "I love you too, Natalie Matthews." He kissed her softly, then deeper, and the night became a blur of tenderness and passion and the sweet discovery of learning each other completely. The months that followed were the happiest of Natalie's life. She settled into being a rancher's wife with surprising ease. She helped Rosa manage the household, learned to keep the ranch books, and even started working with the horses. She discovered she had a gift for it, a patience and intuition that made even the wildest Mustang eventually trust her. Theo was an attentive, loving husband. He taught her everything he knew about the ranch, treating her as a true partner in the enterprise. When they made decisions about which breeding stock to buy or how to expand their grazing land, he always asked for her opinion and genuinely listened to her ideas. Her parents thrived in their rebuilt home. Her father's health returned fully, and with Theo's help and the loan that they were slowly repaying, the Norton Ranch began to turn a profit again. Her mother started her garden, and by summer it was producing vegetables that she shared with half the county. In the fall of 1879, Natalie realized she was pregnant. She told Theo on an evening when they were sitting on their porch, watching the sunset. He was so shocked he nearly fell out of his chair. Then he was laughing and crying at the same time, pulling her close and kissing her hair. "We are going to be parents," he kept saying, wonder in his voice. "We are going to have a baby." "We are," Natalie confirmed, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. "Are you happy?" "Happy? I am the happiest man in Texas, in the whole country." He pulled back to look at her, his eyes shining. "You are carrying our child, our baby. How could I be anything but happy?" The pregnancy was not easy. Natalie was sick for the first 3 months, and Theo fussed over her constantly, driving her crazy with his worry. Rosa was only slightly better, forcing her to rest and eat and take care of herself. But as her belly grew and she felt the baby move for the first time, all the discomfort seemed worth it. Their son was born on a warm night in May of 1880. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Natalie was sure she could not do it. But Rosa was there, and Doc Pritchard, and through the door she could hear Theo pacing, his boots making worried tracks in the hallway. When the baby finally came, red-faced and screaming, Natalie felt a love so profound it nearly overwhelmed her. "A boy," Doc Pritchard announced, "a healthy, strong boy." They let Theo in, and the look on his face when he saw his son was something Natalie would remember for the rest of her life. He approached slowly, almost reverently, and when she placed the baby in his arms, tears streamed down his face. "He is perfect," Theo whispered. "He is absolutely perfect." They named him Samuel Theodore Matthews, after the man who had saved Theo all those years ago. Little Samuel was a good baby, if demanding. He had his father's gray-green eyes and his mother's dark hair, and he was spoiled rotten by both sets of grandparents and by Rosa, who declared herself his honorary grandmother. Life settled into a new rhythm, sleepless nights and endless diaper changes, but also the incredible joy of watching Samuel grow and change. His first smile, his first laugh, the way he would calm down when Theo held him and sang old trail songs in his rumbling voice. The ranch continued to prosper. Theo's horse breeding operation became known throughout the region, and people came from as far as San Antonio to buy his stock. The cattle operation expanded. They hired more hands, built a new barn, fenced more grazing land. Natalie kept the books and discovered she had a head for business, often finding efficiencies and opportunities that Theo had missed. On their second anniversary, Theo took Natalie on a trip to San Antonio, their first time away from the ranch together. Rosa stayed with Samuel, and Natalie's parents checked in daily to help. It felt strange to be without her son, but also wonderful to have time alone with her husband. They stayed in a real hotel, ate in restaurants, went to a theater performance. Theo bought her a beautiful shawl and a new pair of boots. But the best part was just being together, walking hand in hand through the streets, talking and laughing like they had all the time in the world. "Thank you," Natalie said one evening as they sat in the hotel room watching the gas lamps flicker outside their window. "For what?" "For everything. For saving my family. For loving me. For building this life with me. For our son. For all of it." Theo pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "You do not need to thank me. This life, it is what I always wanted but never thought I could have. You gave me that, Natalie. You and Samuel. You are my family, my home, my everything." They had 2 more children over the following years. A daughter named Rose Caroline in 1882, who had her mother's disposition and her father's stubborn streak. And another son, James William, born in 1884, who was quiet and thoughtful from the moment he arrived. The Matthews Ranch became one of the most successful in Val Verde County. Theo's reputation as a horseman spread throughout Texas, and Natalie's business acumen meant they were never caught off guard by market changes or economic downturns. They weathered droughts and harsh winters. They survived a bout of horse fever that nearly destroyed their breeding stock in 1885, only pulling through because of Natalie's quick thinking to quarantine the sick animals. Through it all, their love never wavered. If anything, it grew deeper, richer, more comfortable. They had learned each other's rhythms, each other's moods. They could communicate with a glance across a crowded room. They still made time for each other, for long rides alone or quiet evenings on the porch after the children were asleep. Natalie's parents remained on their ranch, which they eventually passed down to a young couple with dreams similar to what the Nortons had once had. Her mother and father moved into a small house in town, enjoying a slower pace of life. They were devoted grandparents, and the children loved visiting them. Rosa stayed with the Matthews family, becoming such an integral part of their lives that the children called her Abuela. She taught Rose how to cook and little James his letters. She told Samuel stories about the old days, about when his father was young and foolish. She was there for every birthday, every holiday, every important moment. In 1890, on a warm spring evening, very much like the one when they first met, Natalie and Theo sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard. Samuel was 10 now, tall and serious, already helping with the horses. Rose was 8, full of energy and mischief. James was 6, quiet but observant, always watching everything with those thoughtful eyes. "Can you believe it has been 12 years since the fire?" Natalie asked, her hand finding Theo's. He laced his fingers through hers, the gesture as natural as breathing. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Other times it feels like a lifetime ago. A different life, entirely. In many ways, it was. I am not the same person I was then. Neither am I. You changed me, Natalie, made me better, gave me purpose beyond just the ranch. You gave me a family, a legacy, a reason to wake up every morning grateful. She leaned her head on his shoulder, watching as Samuel helped James climb a tree while Rose cheered them on. I used to think that day was the worst thing that ever happened to me, losing our home, nearly losing my parents, but now I see it differently. It was the day my real life began, the day I met you. Everything happens for a reason, Theo murmured. I truly believe that. All the pain, all the loss, it led us here. To this porch, this ranch, these children. I would not change a single moment because it brought me to you. I love you, Theodore Matthews, today, tomorrow, always. I love you too, Natalie Matthews, more than words can say. The sun set in brilliant shades of orange and gold, painting the Texas sky with color. In the distance, cattle lowed and horses whinnied. The smell of Rose's cooking drifted from the kitchen window. Their children's laughter filled the air, and Natalie knew, with the kind of certainty that comes from truly lived experience, that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The Outlaws had burned her home to the ground. A cowboy had given her shelter. But together, they had built something far greater than either of them could have managed alone. They had built a life, a family, a love that would endure long after they were both dust. Years continued to pass in the Matthews household, each one adding new layers to their story. Samuel grew into a young man who combined his father's way with horses and his mother's sharp mind. He started taking over more responsibility at the ranch, showing an instinct for the work that made both his parents proud. Rose became a force of nature, charming everyone she met while also proving herself capable of any task on the ranch. She could rope a calf as easily as she could sew a dress, and she never saw any reason why she should have to choose between the two. James remained the quietest of the three, but his gentle way with animals and his gift for seeing solutions to problems made him invaluable. In 1895, tragedy struck when Natalie's father passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was 68 years old and had lived to see his grandchildren grow, his daughter happy, and his ranch legacy secured. The funeral was attended by seemingly everyone in Val Verde County, a testament to the respect William Norton had earned over his decades of hard work and honest dealing. Natalie grieved deeply, but she found comfort in Theo's steady presence and in the knowledge that her father had died content. He had seen her not just survive the worst moment of her life, but thrive beyond it. He had walked her down the aisle. He had held his grandchildren. He had rebuilt everything that had been taken from him and more. Her mother, Elizabeth, moved in with the Matthews family after that. She was 70 now, still sharp but tired. She enjoyed sitting on the porch with Rosa, the two older women trading stories and watching the grandchildren grow. She passed away 2 years later, in 1897, with Natalie holding one hand and Theo holding the other. She was ready, Theo said softly after, as they stood in the cemetery where both of Natalie's parents now rested. She missed your father. You could see it in her eyes. I know, but knowing that does not make it hurt less. No, he agreed, pulling her close. But you are not alone in this hurt. I am here. The children are here. We will get through it together, just like we have gotten through everything else. And they did. The Matthews family continued to grow and change. In 1898, Samuel married a schoolteacher from San Antonio named Clara Foster. She was intelligent and kind, with a spine of steel that served her well in the rough and tumble world of ranch life. They built a house on the far edge of the Matthews property, and Samuel took over managing the day-to-day operations of the ranch while Theo gradually stepped back into more of an advisory role. Rose shocked everyone by announcing at 18 that she wanted to go to college. It was 1900, and while women attending university was no longer unheard of, it was still unusual, especially for ranch girls from small Texas towns. But Natalie and Theo had always encouraged their children's dreams, and they found the money to send her to a women's college in Austin. She came home 4 years later with a degree in literature and a fiancé, a lawyer named Michael Preston, who had fallen head over heels for the wild-spirited Texas girl who quoted Shakespeare and could break a horse with equal ease. James, true to his quiet nature, remained at home. He never married, content with his life on the ranch, his books, and his close relationship with his family. He took over the horse breeding program and elevated it to new heights, developing bloodlines that were sought after from Texas to California. Theo and Natalie grew older together, their hair graying, their bodies slowing, but their love never diminishing. They had weathered everything life threw at them, droughts and floods, economic panics and cattle diseases, the loss of parents and friends, the joy of grandchildren, and the pride of watching their children succeed. In 1910, on their 31st wedding anniversary, Theo surprised Natalie with a trip back to San Antonio. They were in their 50s now, and the journey was harder than it had been in their youth, but Theo insisted. "We are not dead yet," he said with a grin that reminded her powerfully of the younger man she had fallen in love with. "We can still have adventures." They stayed in the same hotel where they had spent their second anniversary. Some things had changed in the city, but much remained the same. They walked the streets hand in hand, moving slower now, but still together. They ate in restaurants and saw a moving picture show, a new technology that amazed them both. On their last night, they sat in their hotel room, and Theo pulled out a small package wrapped in brown paper. "I got you something," he said, suddenly seeming nervous. After all these years, he could still be endearingly uncertain sometimes. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its pages blank and waiting. "I thought you might want to write down our story," Theo explained, "for the grandchildren and their children after them, so they know where they came from, so they know that love can survive anything if you are willing to fight for it." Natalie felt tears prick her eyes. "It is perfect. Thank you, my love." "Thank you," he replied, his voice thick with emotion, "for 31 years of happiness, for our children, for building this life with me, for loving me, even when I am stubborn and difficult. You are rarely difficult. Stubborn, yes, but I would not have you any other way." She set the journal aside and took his hands in hers. "You saved my life, Theo, in every way that matters, and I would do it all again, every moment, just to end up here with you." They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity and the passion that had never quite faded. And afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, they talked until dawn about everything and nothing, the way they had been doing for more than 3 decades. When they returned to the ranch, Natalie began writing in the journal. She wrote about the day the Outlaws came, about Theo riding through the smoke like something out of a story, about falling in love slowly and then all at once, about building a life from ashes and determination, about the children and the joy and the sorrow and all the beautiful, terrible, wonderful moments that had made up their years together. The years continued their relentless march forward. Samuel and Clara had 4 children. Rose and Michael had 3. The ranch that Theo and Natalie had built together became a family empire, with the next generation taking it in new directions while honoring the foundation their parents had laid. In 1920, Theo and Natalie celebrated their 41st anniversary. They were in their 60s now, gray-haired and slower, moving but still deeply in love. They sat on their porch, the same porch where they had sat so many evenings before, watching the sun set over land that would belong to their family for generations. "Do you have any regrets?" Natalie asked, her hand in his. Theo was quiet for a long moment, considering. "Only one," he finally said. "I regret that we do not have more time. A whole lifetime with you is not enough. I would like a dozen more lifetimes, just to love you longer." Natalie's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "We have had a good run, though. Better than most people ever get." "The best," he agreed. "You gave me everything, Natalie. Everything I ever wanted and more than I ever dreamed possible. We gave it to each other." They sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, watching the Texas sky paint itself in familiar shades of orange and gold. Around them, their ranch thrived. Their children and grandchildren were happy and healthy. The legacy they had built together would continue long after they were gone. Theodore Matthews passed away peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1922. He was 69 years old and had lived a full, rich life. Natalie found him in the morning, still and quiet, his face peaceful. She did not cry at first. She simply sat beside him, holding his hand, feeling the absence of the man who had been her partner, her love, her everything for over 40 years. The funeral was massive, with people coming from all over Texas to pay their respects to the man who had built one of the most successful ranches in the state and who had been known for his fairness, his skill with horses, and his devotion to his family. Samuel gave the eulogy, his voice breaking as he talked about his father's legacy. But it was Natalie, standing beside her son, who added the final words. "My husband once told me that everything happens for a reason," she said, her voice steady despite the tears on her face. "I did not believe him at first. How could there be a reason for tragedy? But I understand now. Theodore came into my life on the worst day I had ever experienced. He gave me shelter when I had nothing. He gave me hope when I had none. He gave me love when I thought I might never feel it. And together, we built something beautiful. We built a family, a ranch, a life that mattered. He was the best man I ever knew, and loving him was the greatest privilege of my life. Natalie lived for 8 more years after Theo passed. She remained active on the ranch, advising her children, doting on her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She finished writing in the journal Theo had given her, filling it with their complete story. She made sure everyone knew where they had come from and what they had overcome. She never remarried. When people asked why, she would smile and say, "I had my great love. Not everyone gets even one. I am not greedy enough to ask for 2. On a warm spring evening in 1930, Natalie Norton Matthews passed away peacefully, sitting on her porch watching the sunset, just as she had done thousands of times before with the man she loved. She was 74 years old. Her children and several grandchildren were with her. Her last words were, "Tell your father I am coming home." They buried her beside Theo, under the Texas sky they had both loved. The headstone read, "Theodore and Natalie Matthews. Together in life, together in eternity. They built their love from ashes." The ranch continued to thrive for generations after them, passing from Matthews to Matthews, each one adding their own chapter to the story. But it all traced back to a terrible day in October 1878 when Outlaws burned a home to the ground. A cowboy gave shelter to a young woman who had lost everything, and 2 souls found each other in the midst of tragedy. It was a love story for the ages, and it was true. Every word of it was true. The journal Natalie had written sat in a place of honor in the Matthews family home, passed down through the generations. Children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren would read it, learning about their ancestors, about the love that had founded their family. They learned about resilience and hope, and the power of 2 people choosing each other over and over again through every challenge life could throw at them. And in Val Verde, Texas, old-timers would still tell the story sometimes. About the Norton Ranch burning, about Theodore Matthews riding through the smoke, about a love that survived tragedy and built an empire. The details might change slightly with each telling, but the heart of it remained the same. Sometimes, they said, on warm spring evenings when the wind was just right, you could see 2 figures on the porch of the old Matthews house, an older couple, sitting close together, hands clasped, watching the sunset. The current generation of Matthews children claimed it was just shadows and wishful thinking, but the old-timers knew better. Love like that did not die just because the people who felt it had moved on. Love like that echoed through time, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope could be found, shelter could be offered, and from the ashes of tragedy, something beautiful and lasting could grow. That was the legacy of Theodore and Natalie Matthews. Not just the successful ranch or the thriving family, but the proof that love, real love, could conquer anything. That 2 people who chose each other, who worked together, who never gave up on each other or their dreams, could build something that would last forever. Their story was told and retold, passed down through generations, a family legend that grew but never lost its essential truth. The Outlaws had burned her home to the ground. The Cowboy had given her shelter and so much more. And together, they had rebuilt not just a house or a ranch, but an entire world. A world founded on love, sustained by partnership, and blessed with the kind of happiness that comes from weathering storms together and coming out stronger on the other side. It was everything a love story should be. It was real, it was hard-won, and it was absolutely perfectly true. The Matthews Ranch still stands today, a sprawling testament to what 2 people with courage and love can accomplish. The original house, the one Theo and Natalie built together, is maintained as a historical site, though the family still lives and works on the property. Visitors come from all over to see it, to hear the story, to stand on the porch where 2 people fell in love over a century ago. And if you visit on a warm spring evening, as the sun sets over the Texas landscape in shades of orange and gold, you might understand why this story has endured. You might feel the echo of something powerful and true. You might sense the presence of love so strong that not even death could diminish it. That is the story of Theodore and Natalie Matthews. That is the story of 2 people who found each other in tragedy and built something beautiful that would last long after they were gone. It is a story of the Wild West, of cowboys and outlaws, of ranches and hard work and the unforgiving Texas landscape. But more than anything, it is a love story. And the best love stories are always true.